Manga. I really like manga. To the point I've read more manga than I have watched anime this year. Not gonna lie, that needs to change, but anyway. I'm here to share with you 5 manga that have stuck with me. Stories that I feel need more love. Because seriously, I've barely seen any discussion about these online at all. So let's change that. And don't worry, all of these are already finished. So no need to experience the pain of waiting for a new chapter. So I encourage some browsing. I'd say I have a variety here, but you'll be able to tell which genres I favor. And let me know in the comments what you think of them. Without further ado, let's get into this, shall we? Welcome to the Devil World, where devils use magic to form contracts with demons, powerful beasts of this world, turning them into familiars. Enter Patty, a devil girl with little to no magic at all, who for some reason ended up making a familiar out of a human. Sorry for My Familiar clocks in at 11 volumes with 77 chapters. It starts off with Patty and her human familiar Norman traveling the devil world in search of her father who disappeared one day because of loan sharks, leaving Patty to shoulder a massive debt. As they follow the trail of mischief her father left, they meet new companions along the way that join them. Lasanil, a traveling gem specialist, and a familiar named Mau, a carbuncle, and another human by the name of Otto, who seems to know about Norman's life before becoming Patty's familiar. As they continue to track down Patty's father, though, they get sidetracked. A lot. That's because Norman is a researcher, absolutely obsessed with devils and demons, using his insane strength and knowledge to subdue and then study them. Which is one of the main sources of comedy in the manga, but it's also a really great way of world building. You get to find out all sorts of things about demon biology and behavior, his masters and eventually other companions' quirks, and you get to find out about the history of this world through him. So exposition is actually fun because of Norman's infectious enthusiasm to just learn more. But as they unravel the thread of Patty's father's scheme, things get absurd, and chaos ensues. And under all that chaos lies something more. Something sinister. This manga will surprise you. Stories that start off simple then sprout wings soaring to greater heights is why I love this medium so much. A story about found family and so much more. Honestly, why doesn't this have an anime yet? Perfect for a 2-course show. It has the makings of what could be a good anime. Please make it happen, I beg you. Have you ever found yourself thinking you need to explain why you love something? I'm in Love with the Older Girl Next Door follows Sugihara Taseku, a middle schooler who fell in love with, as the title suggests, the older girl next door, a high schooler by the name of Hoshino Shiya who is an avid fan of Western films. So for Sugihara to get closer to her, naturally he started to get into those movies himself, eventually watching it together with her. But Sugihara's just a kid. A lot of the films they do watch completely fly over his head, but he still tries his best to understand them and give his impressions despite this. And honestly, I love how they portray this little guy in the story. He's a kid, and we see how naive he is, how cocky he can be, and how little his awareness is of people around him. But he's so earnest, and it's through that earnestness he's able to break through the walls that Shiya constantly puts up. You can't help but be proud of him as he grows and matures, learning more about his own feelings for Shiya, actually being able to express himself better, and come to the realization that perhaps it's fine not being able to put into words why you love something. You simply do. I'm in Love with the Older Girl Next Door is a coming-of-age story. It's about navigating adolescence, how our lives intertwine and influence each other, and about learning to communicate and express your feelings. This manga's short, 4 volumes with just a dozen pages per chapter, so please, don't miss out on this. Sachi's monstrous appetite centers on a pair, Funatsugi Makie, a junior high student and a great cook, and Mitsuhara Sachi, an upperclassman who's constantly hungry. And oh yeah, she's also sort of a monster, specifically a Watari, these mysterious creatures that live led by their desires and are either pretty harmless or will literally kill you. And for whatever reason, ever since he was a child, Makie had this scent to him that attracted these creatures. And it seems his encounters with them have only gotten worse over time. So Sachi has taken it upon herself to protect him from other Watari who plan to eat him. And it puts into question, is there really a difference between humans and Watari? This manga is a lot. Despite clocking it at just 6 volumes, I find it a struggle to actually talk about, because I feel like I dig into it too much. This is one of those manga where the experience of reading itself is the best part. This has such a unique premise and it has so much heart. So many moments of tender warmth juxtaposed with ridiculous antics. It has such a different vibe compared to a lot of what I've read. And the art? Man, the art is phenomenal. Chomoran, the mangaka, has such a strong sense of style. And the way he paces this manga makes for some of the most impactful pages that have stuck with me for years now. And it's also filled to the brim with fetishes, which makes sense when you know the artist and what other stuff he does. You know, you can look at that on your own. I'm not gonna say much more. I'd rather not rob you the experience of opening this bento box. Magic is dying. As the Industrial Revolution begins its stride and usher in a new era, magic and supernatural creatures are fading from the memory of humanity. Ziska, a little girl from a long line of sorcerers, is now thrust into a world where her craft is no longer needed. How to Treat Magical Beasts clocks in at around 5 volumes with 30 chapters and follows Ziska, a young sorcerer and apprentice to a veterinarian, as we see her face the reality that magic is slowly being forgotten by the world around her. Magic only works for those who believe in it, and when medical technology is constantly getting better and easily accessible, people's dependence on magic has waned over the years. But despite this, there are still magical creatures that roam the land that need help. And with the help of our master, Nico, they find ways to use both the technology of the present and magic to treat them. And that's what makes this manga so interesting, exploring the relationship between magic and humanity. Magic and magical beasts would not exist if not for the stories that humanity has made in order to make sense of the unknown. Thus, their biology and existence are always intertwined with science and humanity's history. You get to know of their true origin and why there are stories about them, and see the difficulties they now face as humanity's ceaseless advance slowly demystifies the world around them. This manga's the kind where you lose yourself in its world. It's fascinating and honestly just a really comfy read. Slice of life fantasy is probably my favorite mix of genres ever. Portraying daily life in a fantastical setting resonates with me a lot for some reason. I'll probably make a video about that at some point. This manga is about a 14-year-old girl who was kidnapped by her stalker. Okay, alright, now I know that sounds bad, but let me explain. Just from that I know it raised some eyebrows and I won't blame you. It sounds like the start of some trashy manga that would be called problematic over on Twitter. But this is genuinely one of my favorite manga I've ever read. Hell, one of my favorite pieces of media ever. One Room of Happiness follows 2 nameless protagonists. The girl's real name is always redacted anytime it's mentioned and is eventually given the name Sachi by her kidnapper, who's just called Mr. throughout the majority of the story because he keeps his identity a secret. Sachi has lived her whole life being abused by her parents, being locked up in her room and handcuffed, only being let out when it's time for her to go to school. And those at school see how battered and bruised she is and bully her for it. Both sides are aware of her situation but refuse to acknowledge it, because it'll only expose the shitty things both sides have done to her. Mr. is a guy who, after a loss in his life, has lived without aim or reason, empty and hollow but doesn't have the courage to die. Until he found Sachi, and saw what life she had, feeling hatred for seeing himself in her, so he began to stalk her. As Sachi was about to end her life though, Mr. stopped her, telling her to stay with him instead. Sachi obviously obliged and gave him a proposal. If they can run away from the police, she marries him, and if they get caught, they will die together. Thus begins this warped relationship built on nothing but lies to each other and to themselves. This story acknowledges just how messed up the situation is. These two are clinging to each other out of desperation, wanting to have some semblance of happiness they either never had or lost. They both try to tiptoe around acknowledging it, hiding their true motivations from each other. But a little further into the story, they have to move from where they initially hid, and they finally get honest with themselves. Mr. really only took her in because of his own self-interests, to prove something to himself. And Sachi now doesn't want this warped relationship to end. Even if the happiness she's gained from Mr. is fake, she would do everything in her power to protect it. So they continue to keep the charade up, saying they're staying together because of their own self-interests. Around the same time though, we are introduced to a pair of private investigators hired by Sachi's mother, who have a hunch that there's more to this kidnapped girl case than meets the eye. So they follow Mr. and Sachi to their new hideout. And they start challenging the idea that the relationship is truly about their self-interests. I'm gonna be real with you. This part of the video has been written more times than I can count. Because every time I tried to explain this, I just felt like I came off a bit insane. Which is funny, that's literally in my name, but I can't help myself. This manga is so special to me. Yeah, the premise is questionable on the surface, but beneath that is such a compelling story about forming bonds, trust, and love. And no, not the romantic kind. This isn't a romance. It's just true, unconditional platonic love. This author had such a strong vision for what story they wanted to tell and wasn't afraid to go deep and dark with it. And they handled all of it with so much grace. If you're only ever going to be reading one of the manga I've talked about here, let it be this one. All I can really say is trust the process. It's only 11 volumes with 6 to 8 chapters. This here has soul, and it's stories like these that I read manga for. Thank you for watching. I'd like to give my thanks first to my friends who were there to support me. This video was in the works for around 2 months, and I had a lot of moments throughout where I was fighting with myself. As they say, we are our worst critics, and it's very much the case for me. My brain moves like a mile a minute, and I find it difficult to put my thoughts into words that are cohesive and digestible. So I kept second-guessing myself every step of the way. I've probably annoyed a few of them for bugging them so much, but they're the reason why this got out. Y'all know who you are, and I love y'all so much. I'd also like to thank my artist friend Goofy Mage for helping me with this mascot. Go follow them because they're awesome. Link down below. You're gonna see more of this guy in future videos. Man, this took a while. I'm sorry it took half a year to get a new video out. I'm in my 3rd year of college now, and the workload is heavier than ever. I do have some ideas floating around already, so I'll probably just start working on those immediately. This whole creative process is arduous but very rewarding. The voices in my head constantly tell me I'm not capable of doing this, and I refuse to fold. I'll keep chipping away at this and make even better stuff for you guys. And for myself, really. So I hope all of you will follow me in that journey together. That's about it. And oh yeah, like and subscribe and share this to your friends. I almost forgot about that. I'll see you on the other side.